Yo, what's going on, snipers, and welcome to my 2003 NHL roster build here in NHL 21. So a lot of you guys been probably waiting for this video for quite a while, and myself included. I've been waiting to put this out for a long time too, because I actually started this roster build back in November 2019, because that's when I started my spreadsheet, which will be linked down below in the description or as a pinned comment. As well as if you guys want to go check out specific teams only, because I know you guys have a life and you don't want to sit around here for like an hour and a half and look at every single roster, well, then there's also timestamps down below for you guys to go check out your specific team that you want to go take a look at. But if you want to stay around for the entire thing, I thank you so much for doing so, because it did take me a lot of work to do so. It took me probably 200 hours, I would say, close to maybe over 100 hours just to create all these players, and then the spreadsheet took me a lot of work as well, and then coming up with some jersey concepts and stuff too is a lot of work. So anyways, we're gonna start off with the jerseys and then make our way over to the rosters, and then I also have some draft prospects that I'll like to go through. So let's hop into the jerseys, starting with the Anaheim Mighty Ducks. Okay guys, so here is the jerseys for the Anaheim Mighty Ducks. As you can see, they're pretty much the similar one that I had in my 1994 build. If you guys haven't even checked that out, you could go look at that as well, because I have those videos. I have my 1994 build and a 1999 build, so you could go take a look at those. But this is my jersey for the Anaheim Mighty Ducks. Looks pretty good. And then here is the other one. Unfortunately, they still don't have the Mighty Duck logo. I don't know if they're ever going to get the rights to use it, but it would be pretty nice if they do so. But yeah, these are the two jerseys that Anaheim has. Now onto the Atlanta Thrashers. Also, if you didn't mention, though, I do arena work. So this arena I tried to make look like the Phillips Arena as much as possible. But anyways, here is the jerseys for the Atlanta Thrashers. They don't look obviously accurate because we don't have the Atlanta logo still, but it's as close as I could come up with. Doesn't look too bad. I'm not a huge fan of them because of the color scheme, but definitely it's as best as I could do. And then here's the other one. Kind of a weird looking jersey, but I mean, at least it gives up the representation of the Atlanta Thrashers to an extent. It would just be better if I would have had the Atlanta logo to put on this instead of these two weird ass custom logos. So now we get into the jerseys for the Boston Bruins. Here is the home jersey. It doesn't look great because the top is a little bit weird, but I mean, it doesn't look too bad either. Here is the away jersey. Looks kind of similar to what they have now. And in the alternate jersey, the Pooh Bear, I used I think it was the Utah Grizzlies logo, and I put that on it. Doesn't look too bad, doesn't look exactly accurate, but it is as close as you could really get in NHL 21. Now we make our way over to the Buffalo Sabres jerseys, and these are probably the jerseys you guys seen in my live stream that I did a couple months ago, or a month ago, or whatever it was. But yeah, here is the home jersey, which is the white jersey. It's got the B in the shoulder. Looks pretty good. It's as best as I could get. And then here is the away jersey. This is definitely the best one. I would really rock one of these even if it had that EA generated logo on it. Like, this is a really nice jersey. And then the alternate jersey is this nice alternate jersey that they had, which I wish I really owned one of these, but they're kind of expensive to buy on eBay. And as you can see, it's got like the Buffalo logo on the shoulder still. Looks really clean. Now we're going to make our way over to the Calgary Flames, so you guys are going to get to see my version of Blasty, but you've probably already seen it on like Twitter and stuff like that. If you haven't checked it out on Twitter, then you are in for a bit of a treat. So here is the home jersey. As you've seen probably in the early 2000s, Calgary had this as like their away jersey and their home jersey throughout, I think it was from 2000, or maybe the late 90s. I think it was till like 2006 or 2007. Yeah, 2007. And then here is the Blasty one, which I used I think it was Kansas City Mavericks logo from the ECHL. Looks pretty good. And then they didn't have an alternate jersey in this day because for some reason they didn't have their red jersey until I think it was the season after this, when the darker colored jerseys became the home jerseys. Okay, now on to the Carolina Hurricanes. Their jerseys haven't really changed a lot. Like, they did change a lot after this, but then they eventually went back to the same old look to an extent. And then they kind of look like what they have now to an extent. I really like them still. They look pretty good. And then here is their red version. They didn't have a black jersey until 2009, I think it was, when they came out with that alternate that you guys probably know what I am thinking of. So yeah, those are the jerseys for the Canes. Let's move on to the Blackhawks ones that haven't really changed much in their history. Not as little as Detroit, though. Detroit's jerseys usually don't change at all. So it was kind of weird when they released their reverse retro, because it was a jersey that had never been done before, kind of with the gray. So here is the Chicago Blackhawks home jersey. Looks pretty much exactly like their away nowadays. And here is their away jersey in this, which looks like their home nowadays. And then they also did have an alternate. They had this nice black jersey. I really want to own one of these as well, because like I've been collecting jerseys over the last little while. This is the Chicago Blackhawks jersey I would really like in my collection if I ever got the chance to buy one at a reasonable price, because most of them people are listing for like a couple $100, and it's like, I don't really know if I want to spend $100 plus on a jersey. Now let's move on to the Colorado Avalanche, which their jerseys kind of flipped around multiple times, but they are kind of similar to what they have now. So here is their home jersey. Pretty much actually what they have is their away jersey right now. I did use like I think it's from the Arizona Coyotes. I put on the shoulder like a paw print instead, because they don't have like the actual foot logo, so I just decided to use that. As for the away jersey, pretty much what they have now is their home jersey. Looks pretty good. And then their alternate jersey is this one that had Colorado across the chest, but unfortunately you can't do that in this creation suite, which is kind of annoying. So I had to use this logo, but it still turned out pretty good, I think, and I really like this. I wish I had a Colorado jersey like this, but I do have a nice Alex Tanguay Colorado jersey, so I'm okay with that. Now let's move into Columbus. Once again, I wish they had old logos in this game, because I had to use what they used as their alternate logo in 2004. So here is their home jersey. Doesn't look really realistic to what they currently had back in these days, but it looks pretty good. I mean, I think it looks decently accurate. It's not 100% accurate, because obviously, like I said, it doesn't have the old logo, but it still looks pretty good. As for their away jersey, this is what I have. Once again, this doesn't look really like a Columbus jersey. This looks kind of more like the Rangers jersey that I think they used in an outdoor game. And they didn't have an alternate in these days, because they didn't release their alternate until 2004, which was the one with this actual logo on it. Now let's move into the Dallas Stars uniforms. I had to use a custom logo for Dallas just because they don't have the old Dallas logo as well. Once again, if EA ever gets the chance to throw in these old logos, I will be really excited if they actually do add them. So here's the Dallas home jersey. As you can see also on the shoulder, I did put the Texas logo with the star on it because it's perfect. And yeah, these turned out pretty good. I wish the Dallas reverse retros actually had like a green bottom on it, but yeah, they don't look too good at all. And here is the away jersey. Once again, looks pretty good. Nice green jersey, and they didn't have the alternate in these days, but the year after this, they brought in the Mudaris, which is definitely an infamous jersey from these 2000s. Like a lot of the 2000s jerseys I really like. And yeah, let's get into Detroit, even though you guys probably know what they look like already, because like I said, they haven't changed at all really since like probably 1940 something. I don't even know. So here is their home jersey. Looks similar to what they have for their away jersey in real life, and here is their away jersey. Not much difference in anything, and it looks pretty accurate. There's a few things that aren't really accurate, like this jersey style. I don't know if you could tell, but above the white part on the bottom, there's actually a line that goes across that I had to make red, so you could kind of see like the seams from it. Let's get into Edmonton now, which actually has some pretty sick jerseys. Oh, actually, no, is it Europe first? No, it's Edmonton. Because we do have a European-based team, because Vegas didn't exist in these days, so we had to replace Vegas with a team that I'll show you guys in a bit. I didn't mean to go there, goddammit. But here is the Edmonton jerseys. So here is their home jersey. Looks pretty good. Turned out pretty well. Pretty accurate as well. And then here's the away one. I'm not really a fan of the red collar at all, and the red around the like numbers and stuff like that, but that's the way they had it, so I had to do that. And then one of my favorite jerseys of the 2000s, the nice oil drop jersey. I really want to have one of these, but I know they do cost quite a bit, unless I wanted to get like a child size jersey, but I'm not going to do that because definitely I won't fit in one of those. But yeah, now we're going to get into Europe, I think. And as I was just mentioning, Europe, basically this team is comprised of players that played in the SHL, the Liga, and who else was it, in the DEL, all European leagues pretty much, in the 2003 season. And then they also have they have like former NHLers, they have future NHLers that all played in Europe. And I kind of went for a European Union type of look. So if you guys know the flag of the European Union, they basically have like yellow and blues and stuff like that. So I kind of went for that type of look with these jerseys. Looks pretty good. I would say they kind of remind me of, what is that movie? There's a movie with like blue and yellow jerseys and stuff like that, but I can't remember what movie. I'll probably put an image up on the screen if I can remember, but yeah, anyways, that's the jersey for that. Here is their other jersey. Looks kind of more like a St. Louis Blues jersey to an extent, and I don't think I made them an alternate. No, I didn't make them an alternate just because it would have been kind of weird using yellow as a primary, but yeah, these are two pretty solid jerseys, I think, for a custom team. Now we get into the All-Star team, one of the All-Star teams, before we get into the actual Florida Panthers. So, I did make the All-Star teams in this build. They only have one jersey. Here is the home jersey and the only jersey for the Eastern Conference All-Stars. Looks pretty good. It's not 100% accurate, but I do really like it. And this team actually was the winners in this All-Star game, even though they technically, in my opinion, had a worse roster, because like Danny Heatley had like 4 goals in that game, and he also had an assist, I think, and Olli Jokinen had like 1 goal and 4 assists. Like, those two guys played pretty well together at that All-Star game. And might as well show you guys the other All-Star team jersey before we get into the Florida Panthers. So here is the nice Western Conference All-Star jersey. It's just basically the same thing as the Eastern one, except for it's blue. This team had some pretty good legends on it, like Forsberg and Patrick Waugh in his final season. Now we could get into those Florida Panthers jerseys, which they pretty much haven't changed a whole lot either. This mainly the logo. It kind of will bring back memories of the reverse retro for you guys. So here is the home jersey. It looks pretty much similar to what they had in the 90s. And here is their away jersey, which is a blue one. This is kind of similar to the reverse retro. I don't really know if I'm a fan of this design that I came up with, because the yellow kind of reminds me of like the Jokerit Helsinki jerseys from when they were a part of the SM Liga. And then the alternate jersey is the red jersey, and this one I don't know if I really like either. Like, they didn't really turn out the best in my opinion, but they still look pretty solid. Now we'll make our way over to the Los Angeles Kings. Okay, so here is the jerseys for the Los Angeles Kings. As you can see, it doesn't look 100% accurate, but it still looks kind of like 2000s Kings-ish. Maybe more so their Reebok era, but still looks pretty good. Here is their away jersey. I really like this one the best. I actually own one of these, and I'm really happy that I do, because they look really, really good in person. And in the alternate jersey, we have this nice purple jersey that they used to use as their, I think, away jersey at some point, if I'm not mistaken. Like, I think they flip-flopped the logos from this jersey and this jersey in real life. Like, not the King that I have there, but they had like different logos for these two jerseys, and both of them flip-flop jerseys at some point. But yeah, this one looks really good as well. I wish I owned one of these ones, but they're kind of hard to find. Okay, let's get into Minnesota. I actually did do a custom goal horn for LA, but I won't play it just because it's going to take too long if I do otherwise. But yeah, Minnesota's jerseys didn't really change at all from like the 2000s, early 2000s, as you can see. I'm not really a fan of that like kind of cream color. I think I may have made it a bit too dark, but it doesn't look too bad. And in the away jersey, looks like that, pretty much just all green. And they didn't have an alternate until 2004, and when they brought in that red jersey, if you guys know what I mean. I'll probably show images on the screen when I'm referring to stuff, but you guys probably know what I mean. Now we move into Montreal, which Montreal, once again, another team that has not changed their jerseys too much at all since like the beginning of time. So here is their home jersey, pretty similar to what they have now for their away jersey, and here is their away jersey, pretty similar to what they've had as their home jersey since, I don't even remember when they went to this, probably way back in the like 70s, 60s, I don't even know. I'd have to probably look back in the history to find that out. Like some teams' jerseys, they just obviously haven't changed at all because of historic reasons. So now we move into Nashville, and these jerseys look a lot different than what they have now. And they actually do have an alternate jersey in this build, which is nice. So here is their home jersey. Looks kind of similar to what they had in the 2000s. Also kind of looks more like the Reebok era ones, but still looks pretty good. And then here is their away jersey. I actually kind of like this one a lot. It does turn out pretty good. It's kind of similar to what they have for reverse retros, I think, now, if I'm not mistaken. And then finally, the alternate jersey. This one is probably one of my favorite jerseys in this build. Like, this is technically the weird-looking Sabretooth one that they had as an alternate, like the mustard yellow one. I think this one turned out a lot better than it should have, but I really like this, and I wish I kind of owned one of these jerseys, not gonna lie. Okay, now let's move into the cup-winning New Jersey Devils jerseys, just because their jerseys also haven't changed really much at all. Like, they did have, like, way back, like, some green parts in their jerseys, but they have barely changed at all. So here is their home jersey, and here is their away jersey. Like I said, they basically have not changed it at all since probably, I think it was the early 90s. Because the early 90s, I think for part of it, they had like green in their jerseys, but then they got rid of it. Now on to the New York Islanders, and they have one of my favorite alternate jerseys in this season. And I really want one of these alternate jerseys, but here is their home jersey. Looks kind of similar to, you could say, the reverse retro jerseys, because the reverse retro jerseys are not very intuitive, or no, not the word intuitive. I don't know what I'm looking for. But they're not really much of a change. They're kind of just the same things that they've always had. Here is their away jersey. I think this one turned out pretty good. And then their alternate jersey. I really wish I owned one of these orange jerseys, because they look actually pretty good. So yeah, it's probably one of the jerseys I want on my bucket list. But yeah, the Islanders jerseys look okay for this time period. I don't know like how in real life right now they keep just kind of playing with the exact same idea, just changing a color, because they technically should be changing it up a bit. Like, if they would have brought back that all orange jersey, I would have been definitely a fan, but unfortunately they didn't do that. So now we move on to the other New York team, and the New York Rangers. Here is their home jersey. Looks pretty good. Unfortunately, once again, they don't have, for some reason, the rights to put the Rangers like thing across and not use this logo. But yeah, this turned out pretty decent. And then here is their away jersey. Looks pretty good as well. Once again, I wish it said Rangers across instead of having this logo. And then the alternate jersey, the beautiful Lady Liberty jersey. This one is probably my favorite of the build. And yeah, it turned out really well. And it's also kind of similar to what they have for the reverse retro. Now we move into the Ottawa Senators. Luckily, EA added the old Sens logo to create a team. I wish they would have done so with like the logos for like Blasty and whatnot, but unfortunately they're not going to be doing that. But here is the home jerseys for the Sens, as you can see. It didn't turn out the greatest. I also do have like an S kind of logo in the corner, the shoulders, to kind of give it a bit more realism, but I don't think these turned out the greatest, but they do kind of still bring back that memories now with that old Sens logo on them. And here is the away jersey. This one didn't turn out the greatest as well. It's as best as I could. I wish I could have added like a little bit of a white stripe down the diagonal part in the middle, but unfortunately I can't. But they still turned out pretty good. And then the alternate jersey is the black jersey. I actually own one of these as well. And yeah, this looks pretty good. Now we'll move into Philadelphia. And Philadelphia's jerseys relatively haven't changed much. Like, they have slightly changed, but their alternate jersey in this, I actually own one as well, and damn, I really like their alternate jersey from this season. So here is their home jersey. Don't really like how it turned out, because this jersey style is for their current jerseys and it's not meant to be for their old jerseys. And then here is the away one. This one turned out pretty decent. For some reason I think of Peter Forsberg now because I see the 21 on the back. And then alternate wise, here is their alternate jersey. This one didn't turn out as good as the real life one, but the text in the back still looks pretty good. I just really like how this jersey looks in real life. And it also kind of reminds me of back in like 2003, or I think it may have been 2004. My Sens and the Flyers had like a brawl, like a line brawl multiple times in the most penalty minutes in a game. I remember watching that game on TV as a kid, so that kind of brings back a bit of memories of that. But yeah, here's the Phoenix jerseys, because they were Phoenix still at this point in time. They had the Kachinas. So here's the white Kachina, and then here is the black Kachina. I think these turned out pretty decent. I might have been put the tan color a bit too dark, so maybe I'll lighten that up for the actual, like, once I finish this. But I don't know. And then here's the alternate jersey, which they just threw a reverse retro at, which is now purple. But this is the green one. Once again, this jersey, I don't really like this jersey, how it turned out, and I don't really like the jersey in real life either. It's kind of a weird color system, because the green is decent, but that orange is kind of like a desert orange, and I don't really think it fits well. And then the purple is just completely random. Like, it definitely feels like a 2000s jersey, though, just because the 2000s were kind of a weird trend for like designing and stuff. Now we move into the Pittsburgh Penguins, which had Mary Lemieux on them and a lot of bad players. Here is their home jersey. Looks pretty good. Unfortunately, I couldn't get like the Robo pen for the shoulders. I'm pretty sure it was on there. But yeah, this still looks pretty good. And then here is their away jersey. This one also turned out pretty good as well. And yeah, I'm a fan of how they turned out. Now we'll move into San Jose, I think it is. And San Jose's jerseys, I don't really like how I did them in this build. The alternate I do really like, but the home and away is a bit iffy. Definitely needs some work. So here's the home. Definitely not as close to accurate as this. Like, it's probably the least accurate jersey in my roster build. But, I mean, it's alright. It's not great, though. And then here is the away jersey. Looks pretty solid. This one looks better, I think, than the home one. And then the alternate one, this one's my favorite. I think this one turned out really well. This nice black jersey kind of reminds me of, I think they had like a blackout jersey recently. But yeah, this one is definitely my favorite. And then we'll get into St. Louis. St. Louis's jerseys, once again, haven't changed a whole lot. Well, they did change a little bit, but they hadn't changed. Like, they went kind of back to this recently. Like, I think 2016 maybe, or somewhere around there, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe even earlier than that. But here is their home jersey. And then here is their away jersey. Pretty much exactly what they have now. Then we'll move into the Tampa Bay Lightning, who once again, they reverse retro to this time frame. Well, they won the cup the year afterwards, but pretty much their jerseys were the exact same for both seasons. So here are their home jerseys. As you can see, a nice white jersey. It's kind of annoying how the seams still appear even when you change colors to being all black. Like, technically you shouldn't see that like white line across on the bottom, but you do. And then here's their away jersey. This one looks really solid. Pretty much what they have reverse retro to, except for the reverse retro is now like a blue jersey. And I really like what they did with the reverse retros this year. Then we'll move into the Toronto Maple Leafs. Their jerseys didn't change really at all from this time frame up to 2000 and what year was that? 2013? It might have been around 2013, because eventually changed their logo. But yeah, here's their home one, and it definitely reminds me of way back as a kid, seeing the Sens and Leafs play each other a lot. And seeing guys like Jonas Hoagland, for example, Matt Sundin, whatnot. Here is their away jersey. These look pretty solid as well. And then their alternate jersey, which is a rare one where it's actually a white alternate, looks pretty decent. I used their current logo on this one, and yeah, they look pretty good. I think I actually made those ones on my stream, if I'm not mistaken. Now we'll move into the Vancouver Canucks, and then we got Washington left for jerseys, and then we will get into our custom rosters, which is probably what you guys have been all waiting for. So here's their home jerseys. These turned out actually pretty well. I wouldn't say they're accurate, but they are pretty good. And then here is the away jersey. I really like this one. I really want to own a Marcus Naslund one like this, if possible, but they're kind of hard to find. And then their alternate jersey, this one actually kind of looks really similar to what they have for the reverse retros, but the reverse retros have like that green kind of color instead of the burgundy. This is supposed to imitate the gradient jersey they had back in those days, because that is as close as I could do, because you can't add a gradient to your jersey. I wish there was a lot more custom options to jerseys and stuff in this, and I wish there was roster sharing so you guys could experience this as well. But now on to Washington finally to wrap up the jerseys. So here is their home jersey. It's got that blue bottom, which is kind of a bit weird, but it still turned out decent. I'm not really a huge fan on the colors on this jersey, but this jersey I really like. And this one actually had like a I think it was like I don't even know, I think it's the Capitol building in DC that used to be on this logo or on this jersey. I actually own one of these. I just picked one up recently. But yeah, this one turned out decently, but I had to use this Screaming Eagle because there was no DC logo in this. So that is the jerseys for my custom rosters. Now we get into the lines for each team, and then I'll also show you guys the draft class rosters that I made as well. Okay guys, so here's the rosters for the Anaheim Mighty Ducks. As you can see, we got Paul Kariya, Steve Ruchin, Peter Sikora, pretty good top line. Second line is Steve Thomas, who I think was in his final season in the NHL, or second last season, just barely losing the Stanley Cup Finals to the New Jersey Devils. We got Adam Oates and Andy McDonald. Third line, Mike LeClaire, Rob Niedermeyer, and Patrick Schellberg. And fourth line, Jason Krog, Mark Chouinard, and Stanislav Chistov, who was in his first season. As for defense, we got Nicholas Havwood and Keith Carney. Sandis Ozolinsh, who came over from the Florida Panthers in a Matt Cullen trade, and Ruslan Soleil, rest in peace. Third pairing, we got Kurt Sauer and Vitaly Vishnevsky, and then goaltending wise, we got Jay Jaguar and Martin Gerber. As for scratch guys, we have Frederick Olsson. Now there was a lot of other players I could have added in this build, but I ran out of roster space because you can't make more than 600 skaters, so it's kind of unfortunate on that front, but you got to do what you got to do. So now on to the Atlanta Thrashers. We got Ilya Kovalchuk and Mark Savard and Danny Heatley. So Danny Heatley and Kovalchuk being two really good young players, and Savard being a guy that came over from the Calgary Flames and played a lot better than he did in Atlanta than he did in Calgary. Second pairing, we got Patrick Stefan and Vyacheslav Kozlov, or Slava Kozlov, and we also have Sean McEachern. So two solid veterans on the wing, and then Patrick Stefan, who, as you guys know, was a big bust in NHL history. He was an okay player in some parts of his seasons, but obviously he missed that empty net against Edmonton as a member of the Dallas Stars, and the rest is history. Third line, we got Lubos Sparteshko, Tony Herkic, and Brad Tapper. And in fourth line, Jeff Odgers, who's an enforcer, Per Svartfidet, and Jeff Cowan. As for defense, this team is pretty weak on the defensive front. As you can see, Francis Cabriolet and Daniel Tarnquist make up the top two. Second pairing, you got Andy Sutton and Yannick Tremblay. And then top six wise, you got Mike Weaver and Chris Tamer. As for goalie wise, you got Pasi Nurminen and Byron Defoe. And scratch wise, you got some more goalies. You got Milan Hanelika, Frederick Kasivi, and then you also got Dan Snyder, who also rest in peace. My first ever NHL game was actually against the Atlanta Thrashers that I watched or went to. It was Ottawa versus Atlanta, and Dan Snyder actually played in that game for Atlanta. And yeah, you guys probably know the rest of that story. I don't really want to talk too much about it, but yeah, rest in peace to Dan Snyder. Been 17 years or so almost since his death. I don't even remember. I know it was in the offseason of 03 for sure. Okay, now into the Boston Bruins. We got Samsonov, Thornton, and Murray. Really good first line. Thornton had some really good seasons here in Boston before he got dealt to the Sharks. Second line, we got PJ Axelson, Brian Rolston, and Mike Knuble. Third line, we got Marty McInnes, who's in, I think, his final season in the NHL. We also got Joseph Stumple and Rob Salminer. And fourth line, we got Sean Brown, who was also a defenseman, but for some reason in this game, you can't make players have two positions for like forward and defense. Hopefully they had that down the road. But yeah, Brown also played defense, and he was more of an enforcer. We also got PJ Stock, who's another enforcer. Small guy that can just run around and fight a lot. And also Michael Groshek. As for defense, we got Sean O'Donnell, who's from Ottawa as well, so that's pretty cool. Nick Boynton. And then we on the top four, we got Dan McGillis, Brian Berard, whose career was cut short, obviously due to his eye injury that was kind of reoccurring. And then on the top six pairing, we got Hal Gill, who's a monster on defense. and Jonathan Girard, who also had his career cut short a bit because of, I think it was, I'd like to say it was a shoulder injury, but I don't remember. Maybe it was concussions, but him and Berard both had really short careers. As for goalies, we got Steve Shields and Jeff Hackett. Jeff Hackett came over, I believe, from the Montreal Canadiens this season. And in depth-wise, we got Don Sweeney, who was in his last season in Boston because he was in Dallas the year afterwards. And we also got Andrew Raycroft and Tim Thomas. Andrew Raycroft obviously being known for traded for Tuukka Rask. Sorry, Leaf fans. And then Tim Thomas, I had him as a 78 high starter, but I don't think he's ever going to actually get to play in the NHL in this because he's probably not going to develop, even though in real life he developed at like a later stage. Now into the Buffalo Sabres lines, we got Taylor Pyatt. I almost said Tom Pyatt. Taylor Pyatt came over from the Islanders in a pretty big trade with like Tim Connolly and stuff, I'm pretty sure. We also got Daniel Briere, who came over this season from the Phoenix Coyotes. He was a pretty big acquisition. Also, Miroslav Chiton, a pretty underrated player. Second line, we got J.P. Dumont, Curtis Brown, and Jochen Hecht. Third line, we got Maxim Afanaganov, Tim Connolly, and Alex Kolik. And then the fourth line, we got Denny Hamel, who oddly enough, this guy was not really much of an NHLer, but I remember going to a preseason game, I think it was Ottawa versus Philadelphia, where this guy got a hat trick in, and it was kind of a surprise to see that happen. Also, Adam Mayer's on this fourth line, and Eric Bolton, so a pretty physical fourth liner. And then defensively, we got Brian Campbell and Alexei Zhitnik, James Patrick and Henrik Telinder, and top six-wise, we got Jay McKee and Dmitry Kalinin. As for goalie-wise, we got Martin Biron and Mika Norinen. Mika Norinen obviously getting traded to the Vancouver Canucks a couple seasons after this. And then depth-wise, we got Ryan Miller, who was in his first season. He played a bit in the NHL, not a whole lot. But yeah, his first full season was, I think the year after this, or in 05-06. And then we also got Rhett Warner. Now we move on to the Calgary Flames, who went to the Cup Finals the year after this. But this year, they missed the playoffs, I'm pretty sure. So we have Martin Jelna, Craig Conroy, and Jerome McGinley. Jerome McGinley obviously being the cover athlete of NHL 2003. Second line, we got Sean Donovan, who I believe came over from the Pittsburgh Penguins this season, as well as Chris Drury and Oleg Saprikin. Third line, we got Dave Lowry, Stefan Yell, and Chris Clark. And then the fourth line is comprised of Blake Sloan, Scott Nickel, and Craig Berube. So a pretty physical fourth line. Sloan, I don't think had a whole lot of penalty minutes, or maybe he did, but Scott Nickel and Craig Berube were definitely kind of physical guys. As for defense, we got Tony Lidman and Robin Regier, Bob Bugner and Jordan Leopold, Dennis Gauthier, and Andrew Ferentz. And Andrew Ferentz, I think, also came over from Pittsburgh either this season or the season before. As for goalies, they have Roman Turek and Jamie McLennan, who's now an analyst. And scratched-wise, they got Steve Montador, another guy that I would say rest in peace to, who died way too young. There's a lot of guys like that in this roster build, so it's kind of sad. There's going to be another one on this Carolina team. So on this first line for Carolina, we got Eric Cole, Rod Brindamore, and Jeff O'Neill. Second line, we got Radim Verbata, Ron Francis, and Jan Hlavich. This was the last season for Ron Francis in Carolina before he went to Toronto. Third line, we got Yaroslav Svoboda, Joseph Vasicek, another guy that passed away way too soon in 2011 on that plane crash. Rest in peace to Joseph. And Craig Adams. Fourth line, we got Jesse Bulleris, an enforcer, with Kevin Adams and Jeff Daniels. As for defense, we got Brett Hedican and Sean Hill, David Tanabe and Aaron Ward, and top six wise we got Nicholas Pauline and Thomas Malik. As for goaltending wise, we got Kevin Weeks and Arthur Zerbe. Scratched wise, we got Craig McDonald, who played a bit in the NHL, but he was more of an AHL player. But one thing I want to note with Carolina is this team went to the Cup Finals the year before this, but then 2003 they just fell off the planet, and that's how they got Eric Stahl in the draft at number 2. So yeah, Carolina was kind of a back and forth team earlier in those years. Now into the Chicago Blackhawks, who really struggled during this time frame. So the first line, they got Eric Dezay, Alexei Zhamnov, and Steve Sullivan. Zhamnov coming over in a Jeremy Roenick deal with I think it was with Phoenix back in the day. Second line, we got Kyle Calder and Andrei Nikolishin, as well as Theo Fleury. Yeah, Theo Fleury played for Chicago for a brief bit, and that was in the right at the end of his career, I'm pretty sure. He also played with the Rangers. Third line, we got Mark Bell, Tyler Arneson, so it's two young guys that had promise but didn't really deliver, and Chris Simon, who obviously you guys know is a very physical player and one that high-sticked Ryan Holwig to the face. Fourth line, we got Igor Korolev, who I think was another guy that passed away on that 2011 flight for Yaroslav Lokomotiv. So if he is, rest in peace. If he's not dead, I really apologize. And Mike Eastwood. We also got Ryan Vandenbusche, who I'm kind of surprised his last name actually fit into a created player thing, because usually there's a character limit, but yeah, this guy's got a hell of a last name. Defensively, there's Steve Popst and John Clem. Second pairing, Alexander Karpovtsev, who's another guy that passed away in that 2011 flight. Rest in peace to him. And Nathan Dempsey. Top six pairing, we got Jason Strubik and Steve McCarthy. So a very weak defense, and you can see why Chicago was so bad back in these days. And then goalie-wise, you got Jocelyn Thibault, who actually made the All-Star game. I think he was maybe added as a replacement, I don't remember, but he was a third-string goalie. And Steve Passmore. As for depth guys, they have Michael Layton, who has some potential. Craig Anderson, who was at Chicago at this point in time. I know it's kind of surprising. He didn't really make the NHL till 2008 with Florida. And then also Sean Thornton. Next on to the Colorado Avalanche. This team is really stacked. Peter Forsberg, Joe Sakic, and Milan Hajduk. Hajduk led the league in goals with like 50 goals this season. And then Forsberg had over 100 points. And I think he led the league in points. And then Sakic, I think he missed some games this year, if I'm not mistaken, but he was still like point per game or over point per game. Or maybe that was a different season I'm thinking of, I don't even know. Second line, Alex Tanguay, Steven Reinprecht, and Bates Battaglia, who came over from the Carolina Hurricanes this season. Third line, Dan Heino, Serge Aubin, and Mike Keane. So a bit of a weak bottom six on this team, but they did have the really good offensive players and a really good defensive core. And then fourth line, Eric Messier, Jeff Shantz, and Scott Parker. Scott Parker being a very physical player. As for defense, they got Greg DeVries and Adam Foote, Derek Morris and Rob Blake. And third pairing, they got Brian Marchment, who came over from San Jose, and Martin Skula. On the goalie front, they got Patrick Wallace, so still one of the best goalies in the game at this point in time, even though this was his last season in the NHL. And then they also have David Abisher as the backup, who was pretty good behind him for the most part, and then didn't really become much of an NHL starter. Like, he was kind of a fringe starter to an extent. And in depth-wise, they have Riku Hall, who didn't really have much of an NHL career at all. Now into the Columbus Blue Jackets, we got a pretty interesting squad. This team didn't do good at all this season, but they did have some solid pieces. So Ray Whitney, Andrew Castles, David Vaborny. Second line, Tyler Wright, Mike Sillinger, and Jeff Sanderson. So Sanderson and Whitney and Castles and Sillinger were pretty good, and Vaborny. But when you go to Wright, Wright's really weak for that second line. He's like more of a third/fourth liner. Third line, we got Rick Nash, who was in his first season. And definitely some promise. I made him a low elite, so he should end up being a pretty good player. And then also Lassi Pirieta and Hans Hyvönen. Then on the fourth line here, we got David Ling, Sean Pronger, the brother of Chris Pronger. He only played in NHL briefly, but yeah, he is kind of an interesting player. He was more of a grinder, I think. Yeah. He was like his brother in that sense, very physical. And then also Jody Shelley, who also does stuff now on FS Ohio, if I'm not mistaken. Fox Sports Ohio, yeah. And then defensively, we got Luke Richardson and Yaroslav Spotchek, Rosti Klesla, and Scott Lachance. And top six-wise, we got Jamie Allison, who used to play for the Binghamton Senators. I think I remember meeting him maybe one point when he was like kind of called up to the Sens or something, or maybe was in like training camp. And also Derek Walzer. As for goalies, there's Mark Denis and JF Labbé, who didn't really have much of an NHL career. He was more of an AHL goalie. And in scratch-wise, there is Jean-Luc Grandpierre, who also does stuff on Fox Sports Ohio now. Now into the Dallas Stars, we got Brendan Morrow, who was in one of his first few seasons, I think. And then also Mike Modano, who made the All-Star team, obviously, and Bill Guerin, who also made the All-Star team. Second line, we got Yuri Letnin, one of the best two-way forwards in the game, Jason Arnott and Scott Young. Third line, we got Pierre Turgeon, Stu Barnes, and Claude Lemieux. And fourth line, Rob DeMaio, Nico Kapanen, and Ulf Dahlin. This team was pretty stacked in terms of depth on forwards. Like, this is a very good team. And then defensively, there is Darian Hatcher and Sergei Zubov, Philip Boucher and Richard Maffichuk, and then Daryl Sador and Stefan Robida. As for goalies, they have Marty Turco, who had a very, very good season this year. Like, it was like he was a really underrated goalie to an extent. Like, I think he had like a 2.2 goals against average, or maybe even less than a 2 goals against average. I don't remember what it was, but he was really, really good. And then backup wise, they have Ron Tugnut, and depth wise, they got Lyle Odeline, which I didn't actually know played for Dallas, but he only did briefly. because I think this was at the end of his career. We also have Corey Hirsch and Manny Malhotra, who eventually would go to Columbus, I think, either the season after this or the season after that. Now on to the Detroit Red Wings, who were definitely poised to win a second Stanley Cup with this roster. So you can see Brendan Shanahan, Sergei Fedorov, and Brett Hull. Second line, Henrik Zetterberg in his first season in the NHL. Really good player, obviously. And Steve Yzerman, as well as Luke Robitaille, who would, I think, leave back to LA either the season after this or 05-06. I can't even remember. Third line, Pavel Datsyuk, who was only in, I think, his second or third season in the NHL. Chris Draper and Darren McCarty. And in fourth line, Thomas Holmstrom, Igor Larionov, who is still playing at 40 years old, and he actually played another season after this, but in New Jersey, and Kirk Maltby. As for defense, Nick Lidstrom and Chris Chelios being 41 already at this point in time. And then on the top four, Matthew Schneider, who came over from the Los Angeles Kings this season, and Matthew Dandino. And in top six wise, they got Jason Woolley, who came over from Buffalo, and Dmitry Bykov, who only played the season in the NHL before returning back to Russia. As for goalies, there's Curtis Joseph and Manny Legacy. Both these guys had a fantastic year this year as well. And in scratched wise, there is Boyd Devereaux, who I don't really even know what they would call his type of player, because he didn't put up a lot of points, he wasn't the greatest defensively, and he didn't really take a lot of penalty minutes. Like, he was kind of a weird player. Now onto the Edmonton Oilers, we got Ryan Smith, Mike Comrie, and Mike York. Pretty good first line. Second line, we got Radek Dvorak, Todd Marchand, and Sean Horkov. Third line, we got Brad Isbister, Marty Reisner, and Alex Hemsky, who is in his first season in the NHL. And fourth line, we got George Larocque, obviously an enforcer, but he could put up some points. And then also Jason Chimera and Ethan Morrow. On defense, we got Eric Brewer and Jason Smith, Steve Stais and Alexei Semenov, Scott Ferguson, and Corey Cross. Goaltending wise, we got Tommy Salo and UC Markkinen. And then scratched wise, we got Dan Cleary. Now into one of the most anticipated rosters in Europe United. So first line, we got Greg Adams, Mikko Koivu, and Andrei Kovalenko. So you got two veterans like Adams and Kovalenko, but a rookie kind of guy in Koivu. I give him top 6 potential at 19, just because he didn't make the NHL till 2006, I think, or 2005. 06. Second line, we got Peter Klima, so another veteran that used to play in the NHL, Sergei Nemchinov, another former NHLer, and Alexander Semin, who was in the NHL, I think, the season after this, but then didn't play 05-06, and then came in back into the league in 07 or something like that. Third line, we got UC Jokinen, Robert Cron, and Johan Franzen. Franzen didn't make the NHL till 06, Jokinen as well, and then Robert Cron was a former NHLer. I think he played the season before in Columbus. And in fourth line, we got Alex Steen, Marcel Gottsch, and Yuri Hudler. So 3 guys that all made the NHL. I think Steen made it in 05-06, Gottsch made it the season after this, and then Yuri Hudler also made it the season after this. Defensively, we got Yuri Sliger and Marek Zidlichky. Zidlichky, I think, came to the NHL the season after this as well. Sliger, a former NHLer, but did return at some point. I think it was like in 06. Second pairing, we got Christian Ehrhoff and Nicholas Kronwall, 2 future NHLers. And Yoni Pikin and Fedor Tutin, also future NHLers. Goalie-wise, we got Nicholas Backstrom, who would make the NHL as an overager like in 07, and Henrik Lundqvist, who would be a rookie in the 05-06 season. I gave him high elite potential, so he's going to be a stud in franchise mode. And then scratch-wise, they have Kari Lettinen, so another really good goalie prospect who is drafted quite high up in real life, as well as Dominic Roussel, who's a former NHL goalie, and Franz Nielsen, who also made the NHL, but not till I think it was the 07-08 season. Now into the Florida Panthers, we got Christian Huselius, Viktor Kozlov, and Ivan Novoseltsev. Not really a great first line, but not a bad line. Second line, Yaroslav Bednar, Olli Jokinen, and Marcus Nilsson. Third line, Nicholas Hagman, Matt Cullen, who, like I said, was traded for Sandis Ozolinsh, and Stephen Weiss. Fourth line, Peter Worrell, who's a guy I don't want to mess with. Like, I don't know why, but he's the scariest looking guy on every team I've seen from this era. 6'6", 235. Definitely a guy you don't want to get into the face of. Also Byron Ritchie and Stefan Matteau, who was in his last season. Then on the defensive front, there's Andreas Lilia and Ivan Majewski, so kind of a weird top 2. Then you also have Igor Ulanov, Jay Bomeister, Pavel Chernka, and Matthew Biron. Then on the goalie front, there is Roberto Luongo, who was in one of his first seasons, I think, in the NHL, like maybe his 3rd season, I don't even know. It was an early season for him. and Yanni Herme. Depth-wise, they have Branislav Meze, who is another big defenseman, 6'5", 251. I think he still plays, and he's quite physical. Now we move into the All-Star teams. Just briefly, we'll go through this. So here is the Eastern Conference All-Stars. I don't want to show you guys too much because I want to show you guys when we get to the actual teams, but a pretty good forward core. And then defensively, some pretty good pairings. And then goalie-wise, some pretty good goaltenders as well. Then we'll move into the Western Conference All-Stars briefly as well. So as you can see, some other good players. This team is a lot better, I find, in the East, just because they had a lot more offensive threats and some really good defensemen too. And goalie-wise, you can see they had Patrick Wall, so that is definitely why they were probably the better team, even though they did lose. Now on to the Los Angeles Kings roster. So Ziggy Palffy being the best player on this team. Pretty underrated player if I'm not mistaken. And then Jason Allison, another pretty solid player. And Adam Deadmarsh. This line was really, really good when it did exist. But then Adam Deadmarsh's career came to an end at the end of the season, or around this end of the season, because of injury problems. And then that team never was the same again, pretty much. Second line, Eric Rasmussen, Eric Boulanger, and Ian Lapierre. Or Laperriere, not Lapierre. Third line, Alex Frolov, who was in his first season, Derek Armstrong, and Sean Avery. Yes, Sean Avery is in this build. I did give him a lot of, I think, where is his aggressiveness? I think I made his aggressiveness pretty high up. I can't even see where it is, but anyways, fourth line, Mikko Eloranta, Brad Chartrand, and Craig Johnson. On defense, Matthias Nordstrom, Aaron Miller, Lubomir Visnovsky, and Yaroslav Modry. And in the top pairing, or sixth pairing, is kind of weird, Brad Norton and Joe Corvo. Goalie-wise, Felix Potvin was here for a bit, and Jamie Storr. And then scratch-wise, Cristobal Huet, who's one of the only players that ever played from France, other than like Pierre-Edouard Bellemare, I'm pretty sure. And then Mike Camilleri, who was in his first season in the NHL, and he didn't play the full season, like he played some of the season, but he was not a regular in the lineup. Now onto the Minnesota Wild, who kind of was a surprising team this year. Like, their roster is not very good, but this team went pretty far in the playoffs. Like, they went to the conference finals this year. So we got Pascal Dupuis, Wes Walls, and Marian Gaborik. Marian Gaborik being in his second season, I'm pretty sure. Second line, we got Richard Park, Sergei Zholtok, rest in peace, Antti Laaksonen. Third line, Andrew Burnett, Cliff Ronning, so shout out to X-Tech and Ty Ronning, but yeah, this is Ty's dad. And then Jim Dowd as well in this third line. Fourth line, we got Stéphane Villieu, Pierre-Marc Bouchard, who had a kind of a shortened career due to injuries, and Matt Johnson, who's a very physical player. As for defense, we got Philip Kuba and Willie Mitchell, Brad Bombardier, and Andre Zuzin. Third pairing, Nick Schultz and Lubomir Sekeres, who also had a brief career in the NHL, like I think 2 or 3 seasons. He also played with the Dallas Stars. And in goaltending-wise, this goaltending combination was actually really good. Dwayne Rolston had a fantastic year. Like, I think it was like a 2 goals against average. And then Manny Fernandez was really good as well. Like, these two goalies, I think they won the William N. Jennings, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe not, I don't know, but these two goalies had a really, really good year, and probably the main reason the Minnesota Wild went as far as they did. And then depth-wise, they got Brad Brown, who was, I think, another physical kind of defender. Next on to the Montreal Canadiens. The top line has Jan Bulis, Saku Koivu, and Richard Zednik. Second line, Donald Odette, Yannick Perreault, and Nicklas Sundstrom. Third line, Mariusz Czerkawski, who came from Poland, so one of the rare Polish players in the NHL, and Joe Juneau, as well as Andreas Dackl. Fourth line, Randy McKay, who was actually from Montreal, which I didn't really know until like a little bit ago, as well as Mike Ribeiro, who was in one of his first seasons in the NHL, and Chad Kilger. Then on defense, we got Andrei Markov and Craig Rivet. Second pairing, we got Patrice Brisebois and Patrick Travers. And the third pairing is comprised of Carl Dykhuis and Stefan Quintel, who is really, really physical. And in goalie-wise, we got Jose Theodore, who had a really good season the year before this. Like, I think he won the Vezina, or he won some sort of goalie award, but this year he was not as good. Like, he was kind of inconsistent. And then backup is Matthew Gaudreau. Scratched-wise, we got Marcel Hossa, so the brother of Marian Hossa. Not as good as Marian, kind of physical, not really much of a point producer in the NHL. And I'm pretty sure he still plays, or he played up till a couple seasons ago in like the KHL, if I'm not mistaken. Then into the Nashville Predators, the first line has Rem Murray, who played every single game this season. He was acquired from the New York Rangers, so he played like I think 84 or 85 games this year. Like he was in lineup every single game, so that's kind of interesting. In playing with David Legwand and Scott Walker. Second line, Vladimir Orsog, Greg Johnson, rest in peace, another dude, Scott Hartnell, who I think was in one of his first seasons as well. Third line, Andreas Johansson, Denis Arkhipov, and Vitaly Yachmanev, so 3 guys that didn't have hugely long careers. And fourth line has Adam Hall, Clark Wilm, and Brent Gilchrist. On defense, Carlos Scratchins, another guy that died too early, rest in peace, and Jason York. Second pairing, Cale Hulse, who is very physical for a defender, and Bill Holder. And third pairing has Kimmo Timonen and Andy Delmore. Now, these two are technically the best 2 defensemen and got the most ice time on Nashville. But when I was looking at the ice time thing, regular strength, these guys had more regular strength ice time than those two. So Timonen and Delmore played pretty much top line power play minutes, top line penalty kill minutes, I'm pretty sure as well. But for some reason, 5-on-5, they played like on the top 6 to an extent. And then goalie wise, Thomas Vokoun and Dion Losick. And scratched wise, we have Mark Eaton. Now into the cup winning New Jersey Devils, we got Jay Pandolfo, John Madden, and Jamie Lingenbrunner. I think these are the lines they had in the playoffs, if I'm not mistaken, or what I had them as. Second line has Jeff Friesen, Joe Newendijk, Patrick Eliash. Third line, Sergei Brylin, Scott Gomez, and Turner Stevenson. And fourth line, Grant Marshall, Pascal Rayome, and Jim McKenzie. As for defense, we got Scott Stevens and Scott Niedermayer, Brian Rafalski, and Colin White. And top 6, Ken Danico in his final season, and Oleg Tverdovsky. As for goaltending, we got Martin Brodeur and Corey Schwab, and depth-wise, we only have Brian Gionta. Now, like I said earlier, there is some guys that could have added to this, so like for New Jersey, I could have added Tommy Albeline, but it didn't have enough roster room, unfortunately, to add all these other dudes. Now, on to the New York Islanders, we got Jason Blake, Alexei Yashin, and Dave Scatchard. Yashin had a really big cap hit, if I'm not mistaken, this season, and for the seasons he played there, and he was not very good. Or he wasn't really worth the money he got paid, pretty much, I could say. Second line, Sean Bates, Michael Pekka, and Mark Parrish. Third line, Aaron Asham, Jason Weimer, and Oleg Tvasha. And fourth line, Steve Webb, Randy Robitaille, no relation to Luke, and Matthias Weinhandel. As for defense, Roman Hammerlick and Yanni Niinema, Adrian Aucoin and Kenny Jonsson. And then third line defensive pairing is Matthias Tiemander and Radek Martinek. Goaltending wise, they got Garth Snow, and they also have Rick DiPietro before he signed that long ass contract that he's still getting paid for, I'm pretty sure. And scratch wise, they have Eric Cairns, who I remember is a very physical player. Like I think I remember a game where him and Zdeno Chara fought like multiple times. Like they came back out of the penalty box, both of them, and then they fought again. I think when I was a kid, I remember seeing a game like that. Now I went to the New York Rangers, and this team did not make the playoffs yet. They had some pretty good pieces, so mainly the main reason they didn't make the playoffs, I think, is because of the injury problems that they had. But yeah, so they had Kovalev, Lindros, and Anson Carter, so pretty good top line. Pavel Bure was on this team, but he only played like 30 games, I think, and then didn't play the rest and then retired. So I should probably lower his durability a bit more. Also, Bobby Holik and Peter Nedved. Third line, we got Matthew Barnaby, Mark Messier in his final NHL season, and Ronald Petrovicki. I think this is Messier's final year, or maybe it was 04. I don't know. It might be this year. And then fourth line, we got Sandy McCarthy, Jamie Lundmark, and Dan Lacouture. Defensively, we got Brian Leach and Tom Poti, Boris Smirnov and Vladimir Mahalikov, Darius Kasparidis, and Dale Purinton. Or Purinton, maybe it's pronounced, I don't even know. Goaltending wise, we got Mike Dunham and Mike Richter. And in scratched wise, we got Dan Blackburn. Now, this guy had a really short career. He was a kind of a highly touted goalie to an extent because he was drafted pretty high up, I'm pretty sure. But he didn't have a long career, unfortunately. I did give him starter potential, though, so hopefully he could live out his career expectations in this game. And then also Ted Donato, former Boston Bruin. Now into the Ottawa Senators, my team that I grew up watching. This was the first team I ever watched because my first ever game was in February of 03. So Marian Hossa, Todd White, and Daniel Alfredson. Second line, Brian Smolinski, Radek Bonk, and Magnus Arvidsson, who went to the Canucks the season afterwards. Third line, Peter Schaefer, Mike Fisher, and Martin Havlat. And fourth line, Jody Hull, Sean Van Allen, and Chris Neal. On defense, Wade Redden and Zdeno Chara, Karl Rakunek and Chris Phillips, Anton Volchenkov, and Shane Knighty. Also, rest in peace to Karl Rakunek, because he was another guy on that locomotive plane. And in goaltending-wise, Patrick Lalime and Martin Prusek. And scratched-wise, Ray Emery, another guy that died way too young, rest in peace. Jason Spezza in his first season, and Vaclav Rada. Now, this team won the President's Trophy, so I made them as good as I could. To an extent, like, I think they're an 87 average, which is one of the best teams in this build. So hopefully we can see them win a President's Trophy when we get into my franchise modes that I do. Now we make our way to the Philadelphia Flyers. This Philadelphia team was pretty good as well. John LeClaire, Jeremy Roenick, and Mark Recchi. Pretty good veteran top line. Another veteran line here to an extent in Tony Amonte, who came over from Phoenix this season, and I think he was almost a goal a game. Keith Primo and also Simone Gagne. Third line, Donald Brashear, Michael Honzus, and Sammy Kapanen, the father of Kasperi. And then the fourth line, Claude Lapointe, Marty Murray, and Todd Fedoruk. On defense, we got Kim Johnson, Eric Desjardins, Marcus Regnerson, Eric Weinrich, Dennis Seidenberg, and Chris Tyrion. And then in terms of goalies, we have Roman Cechmanek, who was a very, very good goalie when he did play, but I don't know if it's because of the Philadelphia defensive core or what, but he was really, really good and kind of underrated. I believe he went to prison recently for some sort of like fraud stuff. I don't even remember what it was exactly, but and then backup wise is Robert Esch, and I remember Robert Esch fighting Patrick Lalime in that line brawl I was mentioning earlier, and that was like a very clear childhood memory for me. And then depth wise, they have Radovan Somik, who only had I think 2 or 3 seasons in the NHL. Now into the Phoenix Coyotes, we got Ladislav Nagy, Jan Hrdina, and Mike Johnson, who's now I think an analyst for the NHL Network. Second line, we got Shane Doan, Damon Blankow, another underrated kind of player like Shane Doan was, and Brian Savage. Third line, we got Paul Ranheim in his final season, as well as Chris Gratton, who I believe was the main piece going back for Daniel Briere, and he was nowhere near as good, as well as Bronko Radivojevic. Fourth line, we got Andrei Nazarov, Kelly Buchberger, and Scott Polarin. On defense, we got Ozzy Vainanen and Danny Markov, no relation to Andre, I'm pretty sure. Second pairing, we got Teppo Numminen and Paul Mera. And in top 6 wise, we got Todd Simpson and Radoslav Sushi. Then goalie wise, we got Sean Burke, who was actually pretty good when he did play for Phoenix, and Brian Boucher. And then depth wise, we got Darren Quint, Zach Bierk, and Jean-Marc Pelletier, who really didn't play in the NHL at all. Him and Bierk were both fringe NHL goalies, like they're more of AHL goalies, I think, yeah. Next we move on to the Pittsburgh Penguins. We got Martin Straka, Mario Lemieux, and Alexei Morozov, so a solid first line for a weak team. Second line, we got Rico Fata, Matthias Johansson, who was almost, I think, getting close to point per game when he did play with the Penguins, but he did come over from the Calgary Flames, I believe, in that same trade as I was mentioning, like with the Sean Donovan deal. And then also Mikhail Samuelson was over here. He was like one of the main pieces going back for like Alexei Kovalev, because Kovalev went to the Rangers from the Penguins this season, I'm pretty sure. Third line, Ville Nieminen, Milan Kraft, and Michael Civic. Fourth line, Steve McKenna, Kent Manderville, and Alex Dagg. So this team had a lot of players that didn't really play much in the NHL. Like, let's see, so Johansson played this only season in the NHL, I'm pretty sure. Fata played briefly. Civic and Kraft also kind of played briefly. Ville Nieminen played a couple seasons in the NHL. Alex Dagg played probably the most out of these bottom 6 guys. Steve McKenna was kind of an interesting one because he was an enforcer, but he had somehow 9 goals and 1 assist in this season, so he's kind of an underrated guy in that sense, but he was more of a physical player for sure. On defense, we got Dick Turnstrom and Richard Lintner. Second pairing, we got Michael Roosevelt and John Hines. And then on the top 6, we got Hans Janssen and Jamie Pusher. So you can see why this team was pretty bad, because like I think Dick Turnstrom had like a 40-something point season, but then afterwards, Richard Lintner's not very good. Roosevelt is solid. Sean Hines is kind of a fringe defenseman. Janssen's a fringe defenseman. And same with Jamie Pusher. Goaltending wise, they had Johan Hedberg and Sebastian Carroll. And scratch wise, they had Joel Bouchard and Jean-Sebastian Aubin, or J.S. Aubin. Next, we move into the San Jose Sharks. The top line has Patrick Marleau, Vincent Dumfus, and Timo Solani here for his brief time that he was. I believe Jeff Friesen went to Anaheim in that trade. But yeah, Solani was here for only a tiny bit. Second line, we got Wayne Primo, the brother of Keith, as well as Alan McCauley and Marco Sturm. Alan McCauley was like one of the main pieces going back to San Jose for Owen Nolan. Third line, we got Adam Graves in one of his final seasons. He was nowhere near as good as he was in like the 90s. We also got Mike Ricci and Jonathan Cheechoo, who eventually would come out of nowhere in 2 seasons, or yeah, 2 seasons technically, since the lockout we won't count, but in 2 seasons and put up a 56-goal season. And in fourth line, we got Todd Harvey, Mark Smith. So much Smiths, holy crap. And Matt Bradley. And then defensively, we got Kyle McLaren and Scott Hannon. Brad Stewart, who was one of the main pieces going back in the Joe Thornton deal, and Mike Rathje. And then on the top 6, we got Jeff Gilson and Jim Fahey. Then in terms of goaltending, we got a kind of an interesting combination here. We got Nabokov and Kiprusoff. Kiprusoff being dealt to the Calgary Flames the season afterwards for, I think it was a 2nd round pick, and that 2nd round pick became Mark-Edward Vlasic, or maybe it was a 1st rounder, I don't know. No, it was the 2nd, I think. But the pick became Mark-Edward Vlasic, so that's kind of interesting. And then scratch-wise, we got Scott Thornton, who was the cousin of Joe Thornton, and Vesa Toskala was the 3rd-string goalie, technically at this point in time. But at this point in time, San Jose probably thought that Toskala was going to become the better goalie than Kiprusoff, so they kept Toskala and then moved on from Kiprusoff. And you know what happened with Kiprusoff? The season afterwards, he went to the Cup Finals with the Calgary Flames. Now we move on to the St. Louis Blues. Top line, Keith Tkachuk, Pavel Dimitrov, rest in peace, another dude. He had a fantastic year this season, I think like almost 100 points. And Scott Mellenby. Second line, Eric Boganecki, Doug Waite, and Corey Stillman. Third line, we got Dallas Drake, Peter Kayanek, and Martin Ruchinski. And fourth line, Reed Lowe, Ryan Johnson, and Sean Podin, or Podine, I don't know how it's pronounced. Defensively, we got Chris Pronger, who only played like 5 games this season, but he had 5 points, and he won, I think, the Norris the season before this, but unfortunately injuries kind of took away his season, as well as Al McInnes, who did win the Norris this season with like 68 points. Second pairing, we got Barrett Jackman, who was in one of his first seasons. I think he did win the Calder, I think it was the season before this, or maybe the season even before that, and Alexander Kavanov. And then on the top 6, we got Bryce Salvador and Jeff Finley. Goaltending wise, we got a lot of goalies, but some of them I did have to put in the AHL, so I probably won't be showing you guys those, because they had 7 goaltenders that they used this season. So the ones that I have here, though, are Chris Osgood and Brent Johnson. And then they also had Fred Brathwaite and Reinhard Divis all in this system, as well as Valerie Bure. Now, the other 3 goalies that are in the AHL currently at the moment would be Tom Barrasso, Cody Redkowski, and who was the other dude I'm trying to think of? Oh, yeah, Curtis Sanford is the other goalie. So they had 7 goalies that they played this season, which I don't even know how they did that, or why they did that. Maybe just they had injury problems or a lot. But it was like, I think it was a record until Philadelphia had like 7 goalies in a season. Now on to the Tampa Bay Lightning, who won the Cup the year after this. So we got Valkov Prospal, Vincent Lecavalier, and Martin St. Louis. Prospal would leave to the Ducks, I think, after this season. Second line, we got Freddie Modine, Brad Richards, and Ruslan Vedetinko, obviously the big playoff hero for the Lightning in 2004. Third line, we got Ben Clymer, Tim Taylor, and Dave Anderchuk, who was still looking for that first Stanley Cup, which he would get like the year afterwards, like I was just mentioning. Fourth line, Chris Dingman, Alex Svitov, and Andre Waugh, so a pretty physical fourth line. Svitov had a lot of penalty minutes, or a decent amount of penalty minutes. Dingman and Waugh were pretty much enforcers. Then on to the defensive core, we got Corey Saric and Dan Boyle, Pavel Kabina and Stan Lasavnikar, Brad Lukowicz and Nolan Pratt. I almost said Nelson Pratt for some reason. But yeah, this defense is kind of a bit iffy, but they were a lot better the season after this, because the season after this they acquired like Daryl Sador. I can't even remember who else they acquired on defense, but their defense got a lot better for their cup run. Then goaltending wise, they got Nikolai Habibulin and John Graham, who actually had a really good season as a backup. And scratch wise, they got Kevin Hodson, Evgeny Konstantinov, who I think only played like 1 game in the NHL, and Sheldon Keefe, who's now the coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now onto the Toronto Maple Leafs. This team was quite interesting because they did acquire a lot of good pieces at the deadline, but a lot of those guys end up getting injured and not playing for them, which is kind of crazy. So first line, we got Gary Roberts, who missed a lot of the season, I'm pretty sure, with Matt Sundin and Alex McGinley. Second line, Owen Nolan, Travis Green, and Darcy Tucker. Third line, Michael Renberg, Nick Antropov, and Jonas Hoagland. And then a physical kind of, not really a physical fourth line, but Ty Domi is definitely physical. Robert Reichel and Tom Fitzgerald. I believe Reichel, like Robert Reichel, is I think the uncle of the Reichel that just got drafted by the Chicago Blackhawks, if I'm not mistaken, because I think Martin's the actual father, if I'm not mistaken. And then on defense, you got Brian McCabe and Thomas Caberlet, Robert Svela, who is actually really good this season, and Jyrki Lume. And then they also have Glenn Wesley, who was only there for like this little tiny bit before he would go back to Carolina again. But yeah, he was one of the acquisitions that they acquired at, like, I think around the deadline. And then also Aki Berg. Then in terms of the goaltending, we got Ed Belfour, who had a really, really good season. I think he was almost the Vezina winner this season, if I'm not mistaken. And Trevor Kidd. Scratch-wise, there's Phil Housley, who was acquired from the Chicago Blackhawks this season, I'm pretty sure. And obviously he was a really good player in the past, but he got injured, I think, as well. They also have Michael Telquist as a third-string goalie, and Doug Gilmour, who only played one game and got injured and didn't play again. He came over, I think, from the Montreal Canadiens. Then on to the Vancouver Canucks, who had one of the best top lines probably in the NHL. So Naslund, Morrison, and Bertuzzi. Naslund and Bertuzzi both had really, really good seasons, like 40-something goals each. Brendan Morrison was just a really good playmaker this season. Second line, you got Matt Cook, who I really hate. Henrik Sedin and Trevor Linden. Henrik Sedin was in one of his first seasons in the NHL, like I think like his second or third, him and his brother. And then speaking of his brother, there's Daniel Sedin, Artem Chubarov, and Trent Klatt. And fourth line, you got Trevor Letowski, Mats Lindgren, and Darren Langdon. On defense, you got Ed Jovanovski, who made the All-Star game this season, and Brent Sopel. Second pairing, you got Sammy Salo and Matthias Oland. And then on the top six, you got Murray Baron, and Merrick Malik. And then goaltending wise, you got Dan Kluche and Peter Skudra. Scratch wise, you got Brian Allen and Alex Auld, the two main pieces that went with Todd Bertuzzi for the Roberto Luongo deal. And you also got Tyler Moss, who was more of an AHL goalie for his career. And now finally, to wrap up our rosters, we got the Washington Capitals, and then we'll get into like our draft class players that we made. So we got Steve Konowalchuk, Michael Nylander, and Jaromir Jagr. Jagr obviously being the best player on this team, but Konowalchuk was the captain, I'm pretty sure. Second line, you got Peter Bondra, who was another really solid player, Robert Lang, and Mike Greer. Third line, Sergei Berezin, Jeff Halpern, and Kip Miller, who I believe is a cousin of Ryan Miller and like Drew Miller and those type of guys. And then fourth line, we got Ivan Cernik, I don't even know how it's pronounced, and Brian Sotheby, and Dinas Zubris. On defense, you got Sergei Gonchar, who had a really, really good season. Like, he could have probably won the Norris. He also made the All-Star team. And Ken Klee. Then on the top four, we got Brendan Witt, Calle Johansson, Joel Kwiatkowski, and Jason Doig. Goaltending-wise, we got Olaf Kolzig and Sebastian Charpentier, who had a really brief career. And depth-wise, we got Craig Billington, who barely played this season, and Rick Barry. So those are rosters for every single team in my roster build. Let me quickly show you guys all the draft class players I made. I'll just do it via the player movement thing because some of these guys are going to be in the free agent pool just because they're going to be on like the rest of the world teams like the United States and also like Russia. So one of the draft prospects I made for the year number 2 draft is Alex Ovechkin, high franchise, 82 overall already at 16. So I'm pretty sure he grows to like an 84, 85 by the time the draft happens for him. We also have Evgeny Malkin, who I made as a low franchise, 77 at 16. So hopefully he goes pretty high up. And then there was a couple other guys. I have to scroll through this. I still actually have to do a lot of roster work outside of this, like removing current players. Here's another player that gets assigned to the United States, and that is Jimmy Howard, medium starter, 68 overall. I could have maybe made him a medium fringe starter, but I'm pretty sure he was more of a starter for a while before he kind of like fell off the face of the earth like this last season in the NHL. There's a couple other guys I'm pretty sure, or maybe one more, because there wasn't a whole lot in the rest of the world, I'm pretty sure. I just have to make sure I find him, because that guy is a former Sens goalie prospect. You guys will probably know who I'm talking about if you know the 2003 draft pretty well, because he goes in year number 1. What overall did I make him? Or did I pass him? I don't even know where he is, but maybe I won't show you guys, or maybe I'll just make a jump cut to when I find him. Okay guys, I found him. So here is Brian Elliott. So he's also medium starter potential. 17 years of age, so he's going to be in the year 1 draft. He's also got starter potential, as I was just saying. So those are the ones that are in the rest of the world teams. So Russia, the United States, and I think Brian Elliott gets signed to the rest of the world just because he's a Canadian. Unfortunately, I can't make a Canadian player in the United States. I wish I could, but I can't. Now we go to the European leagues, maybe. Yeah, we'll go to the European leagues. Why not? No, it's not in the SHL. I'm trying to remember every single player I made. Okay, so yeah, there is a couple in the Liga. So starting off with Ilves, I think it was. Yeah, Ilves, there is one goalie prospect that will be in the NHL in a few seasons afterwards, and that is Tuukka Rask. 65 high elite, potential at 15. He should grow to being a pretty good NHL goaltender. So I'm excited to see what happens with that. Maybe he'll go to the Leafs again, who knows. And then there was one other goalie, and that was Pecorine, but what team did I assign him to? I think it might have been Karpat, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. 68, medium elite. Now, the one thing that kind of sucks is he's supposed to technically go in the 2004 draft, but he was an overager in the 2004 draft. Like, he was, I think, 20 years old already at that point in time, so I can't really make him that old and make him go in the second-year draft, so he's going to end up going in the first-year draft, but whatever. It doesn't really matter, I don't think, that much, but he's a medium elite, 68 overall, so he's going to take probably a few years to develop. And then I think we have one more European player, and that is going to be a guy in the Allsvenskan, just because this team used to be in the SHL. And that team is Södertälje. And that is for the year 3 draft. That is Anze Kopitar, medium elite, 72 overall, 15. He should grow to being a pretty good two-way player, I'm hoping. So yeah, that is the ones that are in Europe. And now we make our way to the... Do we have guys in the OHL? I don't think so. Oh no, we do have one. So we do have in Peterborough, for the year 1 draft, we got Eric Stahl, 81 overall, medium elite. Should be interesting to see where he goes. And then, I'm trying to look at the side at the same time as I'm doing this. Yeah, there's no other OHL players. We'll make our way to the QMJHL. The first one you can see already here is Patrice Bergeron, medium elite, 78 overall. Now, he went in the second round. In real life, I can't make that happen in this draft, unfortunately, but he's going to be in the year 1 draft, and he's probably going to go top 5. So that's kind of nice. So there's Patrice Bergeron. Another one we have is with Cape Breton, and that is Marc-Andre Fleury, high elite, 82 overall goaltender. I doubt he's going to go first overall. Probably not, because I think usually it's projected him as 13th or something, but whoever drafts him is going to get a nice steal. And then another goalie we have is in Sherbrooke, because this team used to be the Lewiston Maniacs, I think. And that is Yaroslav Halak, medium starter, 68 overall. So he's also going to go in the year 1 entry draft. And then another one we have is in Moncton, and that is going to be Corey Crawford, 65 overall, high starter, 17. Should be another pretty good pick. And another guy that is going to go in the year 3 draft is Sidney Crosby with the Rimouski Oceanic, 80 overall, high franchise at 15. He should end up growing to being like an 84, 85-ish as well by the draft, but he's going to be a stud in the NHL, just like in real life. And then we make our way to the WHL prospects. There's a couple of those as well. Starting with the Calgary Hitmen, we got Ryan Getzlav, 72 overall, medium elite. He's supposed to go in the year 1 draft. In real life, I think he was a late first rounder, like 20-something, but yeah, he's going to go a lot earlier than that in this. And then on to Kelowna, which we have another prospect. That is Shea Weber, medium elite, 74 overall. It's kind of funny because I did a test run and he actually went to the Montreal Canadiens, which was kind of weird. So yeah, that's Shea Weber. And then we got 2 more WHL guys left, and this first one is from the Kamloops Blazers. This is Devin Dubnyk, 66, medium starter at 16. He should end up being pretty solid as well. Maybe a bit better than he should be, but still. And the final player I made is with the Tri-City Americans. You guys probably know where I'm going with. For the year 3 draft, we got Carey Price, 68, low franchise at 15. Should be pretty interesting to see as well who drafts him and how he develops. So yeah, anyways guys, that is my entire 2002-03 roster build. I still have a lot of work to do because I still have to remove players that are appearing in free agency that are real life players that I don't want to be in franchise mode, so that's going to take a while, but So things are looking pretty good, I think, with this roster build. So I want to know what your guys' thoughts of it are down below, as well as in NHL 22, I guess I can say. I'm probably going to be doing a 2007 roster build, so I'm going to be doing another build just like this next year. I've been doing these since NHL 19, so if you guys want to go take a look at those other roster build videos, go do so, because they are a lot of fun to put together. EA actually shared my NHL 19 one way back, but they don't share these for some reason anymore. But yeah, anyways, let me know what you guys think down below, and I will see you guys next time.